sounds like I've been smoking a pack a day for longer than I've been alive, Anthony.
That would be bad.
It'd be bad for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
It'd be bad for a lot of reasons. Just go, okay, here we go. We're going to try to talk for 3 hours. 3 hours. The good news is you can help me because it is a vibe check Tuesday, and we're definitely going to be taking a lot of calls. 301 230 0980. The bad news, Anthony, is I see you take a cough and a sneeze with your mic off is because I'm operating from the home studio today, just in case I'm actually sick and not just having like what happens when the weather goes from 60 to 23 in Indianapolis and it's a week later and your throat still hasn't recovered, which is what I think is happening. I don't think I'm actually sick. I think I'm just my vocal cords took a beating with the change in air temperature. I don't have a cough button. I don't have an off button. The only thing I can do to quickly if I need to avoid coughing into a microphone is unplug this microphone and plug it back in. That's all I've got. Because, like, there is on this mic an on-off button, but that's only when I'm using it in digital mode. So I've just realized that we're screwed.
Well, we're going to have to roll with those punches and
just kidding. I'm just making excuses so I don't get fined.
Okay, just making sure.
It's not really an excuse. I'm exempt from fines. But unless I just could directly blah into the microphone. But if I turn my head and make an attempt to mitigate the circumstances, that is my requirement to not get fined on the show today. Deal?
It works for me.
Okay. Excellent. Wonderful. Glad we could come to that conclusion. All right. So here's what we got on the show today. We are going to have a Vibe Check Tuesday here, where we are going to take your phone calls at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. We are then going to have a couple of guests where we will get different quarterback perspectives, including one from Minnesota. Are they intent on re-signing Kirk Cousins? Are they going to perhaps say, like, no dice on that? And if that's the case, are they in the hunt for a trade up with Washington potentially? So there's we got a great Minnesota guest coming up at noon. Anthony's having a rave with his lighting situation. And so the vibes here are basically impeccable, Anthony, is what we're getting at. Absolutely nothing has gone wrong with the show. 5 minutes in, let's see how the final 2 hours and 55 minutes go. But the question we're asking on the phones at 301-230-0980 is this. 301-230-0980. This is the question. Has post-combine your quarterback decision for the Commanders changed at all? Have you changed your mind based off of the workouts? Maybe you saw J.J. McCarthy throw, and you're like, actually, I'm in on that kid. Trade down. Let's go get him. Are you concerned about something you heard in one of the interviews? Are you – all of those things. That's the question. 301-230-0980. Anthony, do you, amidst your flashing light there, you can just turn the light off. It's bright enough in the studio today. Let's let it charge up, and then we can get you all your face all lit up pretty later in the show. Are you based off all the stuff that, like, the interviews that you listened to that I did last week, to anything else that you've heard or read, how are you feeling about where the Commanders are at with that number 2 pick? Has your desires, free agency, draft, which quarterback changed at all?
I wouldn't necessarily say my opinion has changed. I'm still, in on Jaden Daniels. But, looking at NFL, the NFL Combine this weekend and just paying a lot of attention to NFL Network, I forgot who mentioned it, but if you look at Jaden Daniels, college career, he's really only had one high-level season of, like, play. And, we always talk about Joe Burrow's his senior year, where he had a breakout year at LSU and went on to, win the championship later that season. But then you also look at a guy like a Kenny Pickett, where he also did not have a stellar college career, but his senior season, he lit it up. got ACC and things of that nature, and that more so was just the lone outlier season for Kenny Pickett while he was in college. So it's a lot of things that got me questioning whether or not Jaden Daniels is going to be like a Joe Burrow or a Kenny Pickett. But I still seem to lean towards him. I was impressed with Drake May over the weekend. I think he did a great job with the interviews. He also, I think he did a great job with the interviews. But so I'm a little torn still between those two, but I'm still leaning towards Jaden Daniels a little bit. But they give me a reason to pause and like try to evaluate it a little bit more and just consider the pros and cons of this guy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that, and apologies to those on the YouTube stream. I know my mic volume is really low. And does my mic sound okay on the radio?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think a wire got crossed, and I can't fix it until we go to commercial break. But I just want to make sure that it sounded good to the vast people listening throughout the DMV driving around. So I think I went into the combine knowing that a lot of people were going to convince me or try to convince me that Drake May is better than Jaden Daniels, and very open to that idea because I think this is the time of year where you have to be open-minded, where you have to just admit, like, we don't have all of the information. And I think specifically some of the things I was told, and as I've gone back and started to watch a little bit more, I more get the Drake May thing now. And I think I've shifted in that direction. I also think that the trade, I am also will fully admit I am more open to trading down and drafting McCarthy than I think a lot of people are. And I understand that that's an unpopular opinion, and I understand the drawbacks. I just think that the capital that you could get is really hard to pass up. Like, when we were talking to Q from Raider Nation Radio, and he's like, you can have 3 firsts and Hunter Renfrow. And I'm like, okay. Like J.J. McCarthy, Terry McLaurin, Hunter Renfrow, and Jahan Dotson, and future firsts. Like, that's hella appealing. But at the same time, I also understand that if Drake May is actually as good as, like, Nate Tice thinks he is, where he's got him as one of the best prospects he's evaluated in the last 10 years, and he pans out here, that passing up J.J. McCarthy, or passing up on May for McCarthy and others, or taking Daniels, is a huge mistake. So I think that's probably where I sit right now, is that I'm starting to lean more towards May. That's probably my number one choice. I still like Daniels. I actually like all of their options. I think that's which is not, it doesn't make for great radio because you want a strong opinion and then people get super mad about it. But I actually genuinely do like all their options. And I think something that I definitely want to talk about later with Winnell when he's in for Overreaction Tuesday is that in part because we just trust the decision makers in charge now more than we have in the last 25 years of Washington football. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We'll take your calls on this next. Has your opinion changed on what you think Washington should do at the number 2 pick, and really more so with the quarterback position going into 2024? 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show, and we're taking your calls on a Vibe Check Tuesday next. looks like the mic, Anthony. I fixed my mic, and it's definitely better, but I don't know. Something's happening weird on the YouTube, so we'll try to get that straightened out. I have some other ways we can work on it, so apologize for Mike being a little low on the video side of things, but we are efforting a fix here at the Hoffman Show headquarters. All right. We got some calls, though, 301-230-0980 in just a moment. I think the other thing that we should talk about real quick, though, and as we wait on a couple more calls to come in, is let's not forget the veteran quarterback options. Like, it's been interesting reading the YouTube comments the last couple of days because, or especially the last 24 hours since Michael Phillips was on the show, because you have some people being like, hell no to Russell Wilson, while other people agree with Phillips that, like, hey, if he's going to be here for $1 million, like, cool, let's do that. How do we get that set up going? So I think that is also something that is worth poking around at. Are you now more open to Kirk Cousins or re-signing Jacoby Brissett as maybe having him as your primary starter and attacking quarterback late in the draft because you like a Spencer Rattler or whatever? Like, I think those are options that we should also put on the table for people, and that's really kind of what I'm checking in on. The reason we do Vibe Check Tuesday is because I want to see where y'all are at as a fan base, and obviously you're certainly not a homogenous collective. You all have different thoughts, but at 301-230-0980, like what do you want to see out of the Commanders at quarterback at 2024 or in 2024 post-combine? That is the question. So let's go to the phones, 301-230-0980. And let's get things started with Billy in Miami. Billy, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hi, Craig. I am calling in as I'm walking home, so I'm a little bit winded from my country club. And I have two things that I picked up this weekend. First is, right now, listening to Kevin's show and your show, I feel like I'm listening to CNN and Fox because the opinions are so different. Kevin's team is so pro Jaden Daniels, and all his guests are pro Jaden Daniels. And they're all actually speaking this morning. He spoke about Drake May not even being a first-round pick. Then yesterday I heard a wonderful podcast on your show from Logan about all the qualities of Drake May, and it really got me excited. Very open-minded to both of them. I think Jaden has an incredible temperament. I like his mindset. I'm just a little worried about – reminds me of RG3 in terms of possibly getting hurt. I just wanted to bring up that, it is funny to hear the differences in your shows. Second thing I just picked up today is I'm bringing in a veteran. I've often seen, like with the Green Bay Packers, they've been so consistent in their quarterbacks. And I don't want to bring in a veteran versus picking up a new quarterback. I'd love to bring in a veteran who has established record of winning, leadership, a new quarterback can learn underneath. That's why possibly the whole idea of Russell Wilson coming in for a year, even if he's not playing, but sort of like what's his name, the Jets, Aaron Rodgers, even as a hurt Aaron Rodgers was doing, kind of giving leadership and explaining how things should be done, and creates great value. Those are my two items.
Yeah, no, Billy, thanks for the call. Very much appreciate it. So I think that there's some interesting meat on the bone on both of those points. Both in things that I think are valid and in things that I think are potential red flags, I'll call them. So thing one, yes, opinions are tremendously varied on Daniels versus May. And we had it last week. I've said this line before, so if you listen to the show all day, every day, or listen to all 3 hours every day, apologize that you'll hear it again, but I know a lot of you are tuning in and out as you drive around. That's what it is. But last week I taped some of the stuff that we were doing in Indianapolis. So at 2:30 p.m., Trevor Sigma sat down 3 feet from me on Radio Row, and we had a great conversation about the quarterbacks. And he said almost verbatim, when you watch the tape, it's not a question, Drake May's the better player. And in his mind, when Trevor watches the tape, this is Pro Football Focus's lead draft analyst. This is his job all year long. He goes, it's not close. In fact, I would put McCarthy closer to Daniels than I would Daniels to May. I was like, damn, that seems pretty definitive. How could someone argue with that? And then Lance Zierlein comes along. at 3. We taped with Lance at 3:25. So that's what, 55 minutes later? Less than 30 minutes than when I was done with Trevor, because Trevor and I talked for 20 minutes, right? Trevor gets up, 30-ish minutes later, Lance sits down, same chair. And I was like, so you have Jaden Daniels going to Washington. Are you is that because you like the fit, or are you a Jaden guy or a Drake guy? He's like, no, I'm a Jaden guy. He's like, I don't think Drake's, like, I barely have him as a first rounder, I think is what he said. He's like, when you watch the tape, it's clear he's the better player. These are two guys who do this year-round, who watch all 22. Like, Pro Football Focus has access to tape that I'm just now getting my hands on. I actually watched NC State UNC all 22, every throw that Drake had, every drop back that Drake had this afternoon. Very interesting tape. My main takeaway, Anthony, from the NC State North Carolina game last year, North Carolina's a bad football team, bro. Their offensive line, not good. Their receivers, not good. Their running backs, their running game, I should say, not good. Because it was a good all 22 where it actually had, like, the down and distances between the plays. And, like, there was a bunch of plays where I'm just like, wow, it was 2nd and 6. Now it's 3rd and 12. And it wasn't a drop back because they didn't show me. So that means they ran for -6 yards. Cool. So, these two guys that are watching it, and they literally see different things, because the way either their understanding of the concepts and what Drake is supposed to do and Jaden's supposed to do, or the, like, kind of what they value is totally different. And I'll give you a great example. There's actually a play that I also watched a little. It was Chase Daniel, the former NFL quarterback, now is doing a YouTube thing, and he did a film breakdown of Jaden Daniels versus Florida, which is an all-time game, like one of the best college quarterback games in the last 10 years. Jaden absolutely destroyed Florida, like, single-handedly, right? And then one of his big plays in that game is a play where it's total beauty in the eye of the beholder. It is an out and or I think it was a comeback and an out. So CO concept, as some people call it, on one side. There's different names for it, but it was a high-low read on the left side, which was the boundary side. So the shorter side of the field. And then on the right, there was kind of what we call like a through route, or it's not really an over, but just it's like a go, but make it crooked, make it a slant, or make it slanted. And so that clearing route, where if you get an alert man-to-man coverage and your guy gets beat and there's no safety help, like, you got this big old window to throw it, but otherwise it's mostly a clearing route. And then the fourth route in the progression is a backside dig, which you can get through that progression really quickly, where that backside dig is live. There's also times where you might skip that backside dig against certain coverages and immediately check it down to the back. And that's what Jaden does on this play, is he decides that he's going to try to check down to the back early. Back's kind of covered by a flat player. He takes off and runs. Now, he goes and runs for like 30 yards on this play. Absolutely unbelievable run, where you're going, what could you possibly have to say about that? That is a phenomenal play. Well, as a quarterback evaluator, you have to decide, do I like the fact that he ran, or do I hate the fact that he missed the backside dig? Because that backside dig is an NFL throw. The ability to hit that is super valuable to a lot of NFL offenses and a lot of NFL coaches. Now, if you're going to miss the backside dig and you gain 30 yards every time, great. But you're not going to gain 30 yards every time. And do you take a hit at the end? What kind of exposure are you putting yourself to? Where if you just hit the dig, you get almost the same 30 yards. It would have been a 22-yard gain in timing, in rhythm. Left side's dead. Through route's not there. Bang, hit that dig. Hit that deep in-cutting route. That is an NFL throw. And Jaden Daniels turning some of those down in favor of running, even if the run is one of the greatest highlights you'll ever see, is why this stuff is so complicated. And I think when you watch, like, for instance, the Drake May All-22 that I watched today, it was one game, and your biggest takeaway is his team sucks, then, like, what do you do? And I was texting with Nate about it afterward, Tice, who's, big Drake May guy. And I was like, that game was brutal to watch. That game reminded me why I don't watch college football. And I was watching the All-22 where I could watch every throw in about 17 minutes, and those are 17 minutes I watch back. Want back. But in that game, like Drake May, I think winds up statistically 1 touchdown, 2 picks. It should have been 3 touchdowns, no picks. He has a touchdown that gets dropped. He has 2 other picks in that game where he hits the receiver in the hands, the ball pops up in the air, and it gets picked off. So if all you do is look at stats and all you do is look at box scores, you're not actually going to get a pretty good evaluation. Now, does that mean that Drake May should have won the Heisman Trophy? Hell no. It's not about results in college. This is about who he's going to be in the NFL. And that's why it's hard. Because there's a lot of stuff. I still, watching that Florida tape of Jaden today, I was like, damn, he's on rhythm a lot. Damn, I like the pace that he plays at. But it's not Drake's fault his offensive line stinks. So that's the question. 301-230-0980. We got a couple of calls lined up. We'll start buzzing through them next here on a Vibe Check Tuesday on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope that you are having an excellent Tuesday, because that means the vibes will be good on a Vibe Check Tuesday here on the Team 980. All right, let's get to the phones. 301-230-0980. 0980 is the phone number, 301-230-0980. Let's get started with Andre in Manassas. Andre, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Hoff. So, I'm thinking about this whole quarterback situation, and I think the NFL has it all wrong. I think this is when the NFL needs to probably borrow a page from MLB or the NBA, because I would argue 100% of quarterbacks drafted should all sit a year. And it's not like it's a brand new thing. Look at Green Bay. Green Bay has done this for so many decades now, and it's paid off. So I would probably, and I know the team is going to draft the quarterback and wants them to play now, but everybody needs to sit. I think I was listening to Logan Paulson, and he wasn't a big fan of, he liked all these guys, but I think every person I've listened to all said all these quarterbacks should probably sit a year. They should benefit, and they'll be better off. So, to that point, yeah, I would. If Russell Wilson, like to all reports, is dirt cheap, I would sign him for at least a year and let my quarterback sit. What would it hurt for us to sign whoever we select? If it's Drake May, your boy in LSU or USC, just draft them and let them sit, because none of these guys, I can see all three of these quarterbacks failing simply because every single franchise they went to wanted to start them immediately, and I don't think any of these guys are ready to go. Having said all that. If I had my druthers, I guess I would go with LSU. I think he needs to sit, put some weight on. I would go with getting Russell Wilson, only simply because he's dirt cheap. And kind of, let the chips fall while they may. But I just don't understand why the NFL, from a theory standpoint, how they've determined the best way to build a team is to get some dude from college who's like 19, 20, 21 and say, you're the leader of my franchise, when MLB, unless you're, truly a generational talent, and that's where, for some reason, generational talent works well in MLB. It doesn't work in the NFL. Then you should sit for a year or two and learn and just check it out. But I don't understand why the NFL, and then they end up giving these quarterbacks $240 million when they're not ready for it. It just seems like
I don't know about all that, Andre. Thanks for the call. There's definitely truth to some of what you're saying. That I do think that there are times that guys should sit. I think by the time that quarterbacks get paid $240 million, most of them are ready for it. Are there exceptions? Sure, but they're ultra talented exceptions that teams feel like they can't lose. Kyler Murray jumps to mind. Is Kyler more? And also, what is ready for $240 million mean? Do I think Kyler, you hear stuff about Kyler in terms of his study habits and all those kinds of things, but it's not like he's out there getting in trouble off the field because he's got $240 million. People are who they are. Money just accentuates it for better or for worse. But I do think, to the point of, guys sitting, the reason it doesn't happen is simple: money. It's hard to find the right balance of quarterback that makes it worth sitting. Why would you go sign someone? Or if you have someone that's good enough, why are you drafting a number one overall? It kind of just comes down to resource allocation. And also free markets, right? This is what happened to Jacoby Brissett last year. Jacoby Brissett came here because they were going to pay him $10 million. So he got his asking price, and he thought he was going to have a chance to compete. Didn't wind up getting that chance to compete, and he wasn't exactly thrilled about it. Sure, that $10 million was great. Was Jacoby a pro and a great teammate for Sam Howell? Hell yeah, he was. But, if I'm Jacoby Brissett this year, and I know that if I slip up, or if they think the other guy's ready no matter how I'm playing, or by next year, I don't have a shot to be the starter, why would I go somewhere where, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to get maybe 2 years, 3 years to be a starter? If I have a chance to really earn the job, or am I just going to sign up to be a placeholder? There's a price for that. And if you're going to pay the number 2 quarterback salary slot, how much money are you willing to invest in your quarterback room? Because you're going to have to pay a premium to get a guy to kind of take more to be less. And so I think conceptually it works. And the reason it's worked in Green Bay is because they anticipated the guy they had in-house retiring. That guy didn't, and it caused massive, weird issues at the end of both runs. They just happened to be good enough with the next guy that they don't really care. And, like, that's the best play, but you got to have one to do that. You know, when Green Bay acquired Brett Favre, that's not how Favre, if Favre had been down in Atlanta struggling. They acquire him. They get him with Mike Holmgren. Mike Holmgren's an incredible coach. Takes him through his career, and then eventually he won't go away, but they drafted this Rodgers kid, and it was time to let him go. And the Rodgers kid turned out to be pretty good until he was a Rodgers old man on ayahuasca. And then, it was time to go to the Jordan Love kid. And now it's like, wow, hey, seemed to hit another home run. Good job, us. You got to get the first one right. There's plenty of other. Alex Smith obviously took the 1 year, but he was already an incumbent before Pat Mahomes took over. Josh Allen started as a rookie. Joe Burrow started as a rookie. There's different ways to go about it. I tend to think that quarterbacks situationally are going to sink or swim, whether they sit or, like, if they're in a good situation and they're capable of succeeding, they will, whether that's the first year is on the bench or on the field. If they're in a bad situation and or otherwise incapable of succeeding, like Johnny Manziel, then they're going to fail. They're going to sink. But if you can find the right combo, and I am someone who thinks that you need to get a veteran in here, whether that's with Sam Howell or instead of Sam Howell as your backup, I do think it's that. And then whether or not you start him, I definitely don't think that, like, that part of the argument is flawed. I think that this is a crew that could use some more stuff. I will say, though, with Jaden Daniels, like, he's already 23, going on 24. So if it's Drake May and he's young, that makes more sense than a guy in Daniels or Bo Nix or Michael Penix, who are all significantly older. All right, let's go to Greg. Greg, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show on a Vibe Check Tuesday. Where are you at on the pursuit of a quarterback for the Commanders?
Oh, Craig, man, let me start by saying I love you. I love the show, even though you kicked my butt in fantasy this year. But you are stressing me out, man. Going back and forth, May and Daniels. Look, I'm not an expert, but from where I see it, Daniels is more experienced. He played 5 years in college. He's a more calm quarterback. Pocket. He obviously had the best season out of all quarterbacks this year, statistically. Even the tape kind of justifies it. I like the boy Drake May. I watched the Combine interview. He has great energy. He reminds me like Phillip Rivers, but athletic. Just commands the room. Looks like everybody's going to love him. But he seems, I watched a couple All-22s, and Lord knows I'm not an expert, but he doesn't seem like he's quite ready to start yet. With the footwork, with the accuracy. Obviously, he played for a team, like you said, that wasn't too good. But guess what? He's coming to, the Washington football team, who's not going to be very, very, very good across the board. And I'm just worried we're going to be in a sink-or-swim situation. And I feel like we should swing for the fences, go for Daniels. I know everybody's got the RG3 hangover. I feel him, right? We watched him take some terrible hits, and we don't want to see that happen to Daniels. But we got to get over that and go for the player who has the chance to be an MVP, because those are the quarterbacks that win you championships. I'll let you go.
All right, Greg, thanks for the call. I agree with a lot of what Greg said. Like, I think that Jaden has a chance to be really good. I think he layers balls really well. His deep ball is fantastic. He's got good arm strength. I was one of the throws in the Florida game that I loved was he takes a shot. And it's not like a vertical shot. It's really a horizontal shot. It's just so freaking far because the college hashes are so wide. He throws a hitch route to Malik Neighbors, who's wide left from the right hash. And you're like, that is a rope. Obviously, the running stuff is incredible. He's running away from guys in the SEC. Like, it's hella impressive what Jaden Daniels put on tape. But he had a pretty good O-line. He's like, I got a couple NFL offensive linemen in front of him. He had 2 first-rounders outside. And we realized, like, we knew Malik Neighbors was good. We knew Brian Thomas Jr. was good. Brian Thomas Jr. is like 230 pounds and ran a 4.33, 4.36 this weekend at the Combine. That's nuts. So, when we talk about a guy who's had to survive some circumstances, Drake May's got that on his resume. Caleb Williams also, by the way, has that on his resume. He's got better receivers, but his O-line was not good at USC. And Drake May was playing with no offensive line, or not a very good offensive line, one NFL receiver who showed up midway through the year. and is not as good as people thought he was. Like, he's a speed-only guy that after his Senior Bowl performance might not get drafted in the first 2 rounds in Tez Walker. And, like, that's what he was dealing with week in, week out. And so, yeah, he wasn't playing against SEC defenses like Jaden Daniels was, but he also wasn't playing with the dudes that Jaden Daniels was. So this is why it's complicated. It's not a simple formula of if they're put in the offensive line ranking. LSU 9 out of 10. Okay, Drake May 4 out of 10. Okay, arm strength, blah blah blah, this that, and then you punch out a formula and you're guaranteed success. This is not how it works. So like I know people are we'll do this and never read the comments tomorrow, but people are like, how come you're changing your mind? And it's like, I'm not changing my mind. Or to the extent I am, my mind is being changed by more information, which if you listen to me, if you listen to Logan, if you listen to anybody worth listening to this time of year, when it comes to the direction teams are going to go and also their own personal opinions, if they don't tell you, I am continuing to gather more information and my mind may change, they're not being honest with you, or those are the people that are genuinely pushing an agenda. Because I hate when I get accused of that. Oh, you're pushing a Jaden. I've got accused of both, which is quite funny. Your Jaden Daniels agenda, your Drake May agenda. No, I'm just trying to figure out which dude's better. And the information has taken me in different directions at different times, depending on what information is available and who I'm talking to. Luckily enough for y'all, most of those conversations are happening into microphones. So you can hear them and you can go on the ride with me. 301-230-0980. It is the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube with crystal clear audio and everything. And we're taking more of your calls on a Vibe Check Tuesday next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube. Chat is popping off at youtube.com/@theteam980. Of course, you miss any portion of the show, you can check that out on YouTube on demand or the Hoffman Show podcast. Just check out by the end of each hour. So like as soon as we go to the 5 o'clock hour, Anthony will have the 4 o'clock hour up. So if you get a little bit behind, great way to catch up on demand. Or if you have to miss a show or you want to listen the next morning or whatever it is, you miss an interview that, we tease, say, hey, we got a Minnesota Vikings insider on whether Kirk Cousins is going to re-sign up there. And if not, what are they going to do at quarterback, including potentially trading up to the number 2 pick with Washington Commanders? And you're like, that sounds interesting, but I have to go pick up my kid. So where can I check that out? Easy. You check the Hoffman Show podcast. Voila. There it is. All right, let's go back to the phones. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Noel in Chicago. Noel, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig. Good afternoon. Thanks for letting me call in. Always great to chat with you.
Thanks, buddy.
Initially, for a while, I was really in on Jaden Daniels just because of the athleticism, his potential ceiling, and just his dazzling playmaking ability. But, in the last week, I've kind of brought myself a little bit back to earth, and I tried to think long-term for our franchise as far as what is best and what we can potentially become. I think Drake really is the long-term better prospect as far as the higher ceiling and just what he has the ability to become is just something that is a mystery that I think we need to find out. And, we're kind of like tempted to always pick the better prospect in hopes of winning sooner rather than later. We got to be patient, I think. For the first time in a long time, I think we have to step back and just be patient and try to build this thing the right way. And obviously it starts with the quarterback. And regardless, we just got to support Drake May as much as we can because I really think he's got a lot of potential despite all of his flaws. And hopefully we make that decision and pick him number 2. That's where I'm at. So.
Yeah, Noel, thanks for the call. Always appreciate it. Always smart stuff. And I think I'm glad Noel said something that I think gets twisted tremendously, which is I think that Drake May's ceiling is higher than Jaden Daniels. Now people are going to go, oh, that's a hot take, Craig. Is it? Is it? Think about the best quarterbacks in the league. They can move, they can run, but they're lethal from the pocket. The reason that Pat Mahomes is Pat Mahomes is not because Pat Mahomes can run around. Yeah, that raises his ceiling. But if Pat Mahomes was the run-around guy and he wasn't able to just dice you from the pocket and make the plays off schedule as a thrower that he makes, he's not Pat Mahomes. He's insert running quarterback who's not very good here. If Josh Allen was just a bulldozer and couldn't laser you from the pocket, he's a bit like he's Cam Newton after the shoulder surgery. Not a very good football player. I had a Cam Newton jersey as a kid. Like, I'm a big Cam guy. Cam, at his best, could bulldoze you and was one of the best, running backs in the league who also was a 4,000-yard passer because he could beat you from the pocket. Then his shoulder got hurt, and he could do neither anymore. Couldn't run without getting hurt. Couldn't throw. Accuracy wasn't there. Just the shoulder went on him. Burrow, not the greatest runner, but can scramble, but kills you from the pocket. His willingness to do that, to throw down the field and do that stuff from the pocket is what makes him great. And so I think that when we think about quarterbacks, we get the ceiling and the floor wrong. Yes, Lamar's an MVP player, but Lamar won the MVP, not like the threat of what he does as a runner, one, is wholly unique. There's no one else in the league that can run like Lamar at the quarterback position. So he's a little bit of a special outlier. But even then, he can dice you from the pocket. And that is what has made his career sustainable. It's not just the running. Yeah, he runs, and when he does it better than anyone. But his willingness to sit back there and try to beat you from the pocket causes defenses to react to him in traditional ways, and then they get themselves out of rush lanes, and then he kills you. And so, yeah, where for Pat Mahomes, it could be an 8-yard scramble, it turns into a 30-yard run from Lamar. It starts with his ability to actually win from the pocket. And so with Jaden Daniels, his floor is high because you can do quarterback run stuff with him, and he will be able to run the football and get you first downs and do that kind of stuff. And when his first read is open, he will hit it on rhythm and in timing. And I was going back and forth with someone on YouTube yesterday about this. I had said, and I think it was on Kimes Pod, Daniels is more of a one read and tuck it thrower. And there isn't a lot of stuff of him on tape, relatively speaking. This is all relative. But relatively speaking, of him getting through multiple reads and a progression compared to a guy like May, compared to a guy like Caleb. And those guys are, getting through their progressions all the way, then having to run for their lives because nobody's open and their offensive lines aren't any good. But with Jaden, he's got a clean pocket, and Malik Neighbors is open all the time. Even when he's not open, he's open. So, why would you get to your second read? These progressions aren't designed to be gone through. They're designed to work. And so if you're Jaden Daniels and you drop back and you get to your first read and your first read's open, you throw it. And it looks really pretty. And his accuracy's good. And he'll put balls on back shoulders. And he'll throw guys open away from zone defenders. And he does a lot of really good stuff. But how much of that translates to the NFL? And can he do, when in the NFL, those are not going to be wide open all the time, what does he do? And there's not a lot of that on tape, relatively speaking. And so his success level in terms of ceiling will be determined on that. Meanwhile, Drake is someone who is more adept from the pocket, not as lethal of a runner in terms of big plays, but absolutely can scramble and scrambles to throw where he creates big plays off schedule with his arm. That's the kind of quarterback that succeeds in this league. And I know people make the Herbert comparison, and if he turns into Herbert, you'll be very happy you drafted him. In fact, you would argue that the whole reason Washington is in this situation in the first place is because they drafted Chase Young over Justin Herbert in 2020 in the first place, or back then. You're going to be really happy. And so, yeah, I would say if you're choosing between a running quarterback and someone who can beat you from the pocket, while mobility is a must, you still want the pocket guy. Because if you have to pick one or the other, the pocket's the one where and maybe that's not even the right way to phrase it. The right way to phrase it is this. If you're choosing between a runner who's got questionable pocket skills or a pocket guy who's got questionable running skills, the ceiling of the pocket guy is higher. And that's kind of the decision that we're making. And I think that's why a lot of us, even who like Jaden Daniels more to begin with, because the TV copy of the tape looked really pretty all the time, and Drake's looked like a bit of a mess, watch the All-22, get deeper into it, and go, oh, I understand it now. That's what translates to the league. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. That'll do for this Vibe Check Tuesday. Appreciate all of the calls. When we get back, Matthew Kohler, who covers the Vikings up in Minneapolis, will join us. Are they out now on Kirk Cousins? And if so, what are they in on at quarterback? And is it the number 2 pick? We will talk with a Vikings insider, Matthew Kohler, next. Hoffman Show, Hour 2 here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to take some visits around the country to different teams who have quarterback issues. They need a quarterback. That's the issue. Whether they need to re-sign someone, whether they need to acquire someone, because any team that's got a quarterback desire is certainly going to have their eye on that number 2 pick. Of course, Washington has its own, but if the price is right, someone gets super desperate. Who knows? So let's kind of feel out these situations. We did it last week on Radio Row in Indianapolis with Q Myers from Las Vegas. Raiders have the 13th pick in the draft. At number 11, it's the Minnesota Vikings, who have a familiar face they've got to also figure out in Kirk Cousins. And that is today's Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in. Not My Beat.
Matthew Coller covers the Vikings for 1500 ESPN up in Minnesota. Matthew, welcome to the show, sir. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. What's going on?
Just trying to figure out quarterback, something we've been doing in this town for, well, they've been doing it longer than I've been here, that's for sure. And the most we've had it figured out is that Cousins fella that you've gotten to know over the last couple of years. I saw your colleague up at ESPN who you did a podcast with, I think today, on Kevin Seifert, just dropped a story on ESPN.com basically saying like he thinks the time is up for Minnesota and Cousins, that they both would like a reunion, but the market or other factors might get in the way. How do you see Cousins, the likelihood of Cousins re-signing in Minnesota? Let's start there.
Yeah, it seems to be by the day. There's more and more evidence that he will not be coming back. And I came back from the NFL Combine at Indianapolis feeling very much like you could start printing Kirk Cousins Atlanta Falcons jerseys. I mean, every person that I talked to, whether it was in the league or other media, everybody just believed he was going to be an Atlanta Falcon. And it makes so much sense. I mean, they're a team with an 81-year-old owner who hasn't made the playoffs since 2017. They've got a bunch of weapons that they've drafted and an offensive coordinator who runs a similar system to Kevin O'Connell. I mean, it all kind of comes together. And also, you have to ask, well, who's desperate enough to pay Kirk? And I don't think the Vikings are that team because when you look at the totality of the Vikings roster, they need about 10 starters, much less backups, much less filling out, depth and so forth, just starters, because half their roster is a free agent right now. And how exactly are you going to sign Kirk Cousins to a huge deal and then be able to fill that many spots and be a contender? And even if you look at the last few years of teams, their rosters were better than the one they're going to be able to build through free agency, especially with every good player getting franchise tagged. Even if they had endless cap space, there's just not enough free agents to build a great team. So they need to take a slower approach. They need to build through the draft. They need to develop players that they've drafted recently. And that doesn't really scream to me, oh, yeah, bring back a 36-year-old quarterback who is coming off an Achilles injury. That's usually something you do when you are in desperation win now mode. So I think the Vikings like Kirk Cousins so much that they want to be respectful of him. They want to say, we like you. We're going to give you an offer. And if he came back, I guess they would probably change their plans and try to go all in and win. But I don't think it's ever really made sense with their timeline and where they stand right now for him to return.
So what does that mean then? Obviously, I mean, personally, transparently, like I'm very interested in what that means for O'Connell because I covered Kevin when I was still on the beat here. And I think he's a really good coach. Like I think one of the biggest mistakes of the previous regime was letting him go. I also honestly think that, they probably been a year or two early. I think the experience in LA helped Kevin a lot be as successful as he has been in Minnesota, but I think he should have been a head coaching candidate here instead of Ron Rivera 5 years ago. So who knows? But what does that mean for that regime up there that has had some winning? And I feel like sometimes winning early, if you then have to reset things, can be the worst thing possible for a coach and a general manager.
You are 100% right when it comes to you get here, you win 13 games, then you want to do it again. And even if that's not what the roster was going to be capable of, I mean, I think we all know that 2022 season was just a charmed life, but also they had a ton of older players. Like I saw Eric Hendricks just got released by the Chargers. He was a key player in his 30s, and Zadarius Smith and Patrick Peterson and Adam Thielen. those guys were not going to continue into the future to play at that same level. So the Vikings did what was smart, and they did a reset. And they actually had a lot of players that took over for those guys step into those roles and perform pretty well. Like Ivan Pace Jr. became one of the best stories last year, undrafted and an above-average starter. Josh Metellus went from a special teamer to a quality player. So their plan was actually in the midst of working, which was getting rid of kind of the older guys, refreshing the roster, and then Kirk's Achilles popped. And turns out Josh Dobbs was not good enough to take them to the playoffs, but maybe just have kind of one or two memorable games. And when you finish 7-10, it doesn't really matter how you got there. There's going to be pressure on the head coach. Personally, I think that the ownership just needs to remove themselves from fire a coach mode and be patient with this thing. Like, don't be like every NFL team that, when you have two bad seasons in a row, you have to fire somebody. I think they need to give Kevin O'Connell and their GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah time to rebuild this roster around a young quarterback that is handpicked by Kevin O'Connell in this draft and go forward that way. And that's the best chance of possibly succeeding. But that's easier to say now in March than it is when you are 3-7 or something, right? And then you start feeling the pressure. But I really think if there's a situation that's tailor-made for a team and a coach to rebuild slowly over a year, 2 years, it's probably this team right now. I mean, because they just don't have enough to really compete in that division that all of a sudden looks stacked.
Right. And if you're going to fire Kevin O'Connell, you'd want like a young quarterback whisperer type. You'd want Kevin O'Connell. Matthew Collar, Vikings insider for 1500 ESPN, is with us here on the Hoffman Show. So that means you need the young quarterback. Do you think the Vikings will be calling Washington, New England to get to the top of this draft? And if so, do you have any early feel on who they might be targeting?
Oh, I promise you they'll be calling. There's no question about it. Assuming Kirk Cousins leaves. Now, whether they're taking that phone call and the Vikings could put together a big enough offer to move Washington or New England off of those quarterbacks, that I really, really question. I mean, a lot of times with this, we talk about a million different scenarios. We get to draft night, and the thing we expected to happen happens. And that was last year. The Vikings tried to make calls up to get Anthony Richardson, and the Colts were like, nope, we didn't tank for nothing, buddy. And, they just drafted the guy they wanted. And I think Washington should do the same thing. Like, just draft Drake May or Jaden Daniels, whoever you like better, and then rebuild there. That's the problem the Vikings face, is that the teams in the top three all are in a spot where they want to draft those quarterbacks. And I don't know that there's enough the Vikings could give up without completely going all, Ricky Williams, trade your whole draft type of move in order for Washington to say yes. Is 3 firsts enough? Like, I don't even know that it is, because you're talking about quarterbacks that could be the franchise guy for a long time that, as you mentioned, Washington has had a tad bit of trouble pinning down. So, I think that they're going to make every phone call. That's why you're hearing rumors of, they might be interested in Trey Lance or Justin Fields or whatever. I think that they're looking at every single option for quarterback, and definitely trading up is going to be one of them.
So is there a particular one that you like? Because those are the shows we do these types of years. Like, this is where I'm at today, and we'll see about tomorrow. But whether it's going after a guy like Fields in the division, which I'm sure the Bears would just absolutely love to do, whether it's Fields, whether it's another name free agent wise on the cheap, a guy like Russell Wilson because he's getting paid bukus from Denver, or one of these young guys, is there a particular direction that you think is the best option as we sit here on Tuesday, March 5th?
Yeah, I think when Kevin O'Connell goes to sleep at night, he has visions of Drake May being his franchise quarterback. You look at the size, the velocity on the football, how he throws the ball over the middle of the field, how he throws deep. And also, he does some wild stuff if you watch his games, but he reminds me of Matthew Stafford. I mean, just this big, giant dude with a huge arm and kind of a wily playmaking nature to him that I think Kevin O'Connell would really love to shape that into his franchise quarterback. And the one thing also that for the Vikings, you can give a rookie Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and that's pretty good. I mean, because when we go back to like Sam Darnold he's throwing to Robbie Anderson and Jamison Crowder as like his top receivers for the New York Jets. If you want a rookie to have a chance to succeed and do something special, a lot of times you're going to have to build the supporting cast. And the Vikings already have it with these two great receivers. And you mentioned O'Connell and being kind of a quarterback whisperer type of coach, where we saw with Kirk Cousins how that relationship built over 2 years together and molded the offense around Kirk Cousins. If you had somebody with the tools of Drake May and the playmaking to add on top of it, which we know that Kirk Cousins does not have, you could really have something special if he hits. So I think that if there was a guy they were going to give 3 firsts to move up and get, it would be Drake May.
Interesting, because I think that I think Denver might be in the same boat. I think Vegas wants to move up for Daniels, so we'll see if either of these picks move. What's the situation with JJ contractually? Viking or receivers typically don't have the most patience ever. So if all of a sudden he's dealing with a rookie quarterback, how does that locker room and react to it? Especially some of the guys like Justin Jefferson, who first couple of years he's like, this is awesome, we win, and we're going to compete for championships, and all of a sudden the trend might be going the other direction.
Yeah, I think with Justin Jefferson, I just want to tell everybody to take a deep breath. Just relax. Nick Bosa did not sign his contract until, I believe, September 9th last year, and that might be what we're in for with Justin Jefferson. Deadlines make deals in the NFL for a reason. I do know the Vikings were very, very unhappy about any suggestion that Justin Jefferson could get traded, and I believe that to be fully legit, because why would you do that? That would be they already have a Randy Moss and a Herschel Walker trade in their past. What, do you want another one? I don't think you could get Kevin O'Connell to trade Justin Jefferson for anything short of Mahomes or Josh Allen. I think that's how much he sees him as a reason someday they can win the Super Bowl, and they'll get it worked out. I mean, they were at least close last year. The fact that they even negotiated last year is unusual, because normally players who are first rounders don't negotiate until before their 5th-year option year. That just speaks to how much the Vikings want to get a deal done with him. And from Jefferson's perspective, look at all the guys being franchise tagged today. If you're a player and you're a first-round pick, do you really have control over where you go? Because if Jefferson wants to try to hit free agency someday, he's got to go through his 5th-year option and 2 franchise tags. What is that? Are we at 2027 before he could actually do that? I mean, come on. It's much better for him to sign an extension, allow the team to play a little, fun games with the salary cap, to allow them to sign other players around him and so forth, and then, build around him. I mean, it all makes sense. I think that we just love to try to make that happen. The trade and the trade rumors and those freaks who put people in other jerseys and stuff because they're not real artists or whatever. So I don't know. I think it was kind of a social media invention that there was any chance he was going to be traded or not signed.
Yeah, that, or we all know how the subterfuge works at the combine, and when NFL people get together, it's other teams being like, yeah, I heard this, or an agent being like, I heard this, because they're trying to get a rumor mill started to see what they can dig up. Matthew Collar is with us from 1500 ESPN up in the Twin Cities, covering the Vikings. Let's wrap with this, Matthew, to go full circle here. If Cousins leaves, what's the Cousins legacy in Minnesota?
Might depend on who you ask. Did he fail them? Did they fail him? Was it destined to fail anyway? The key word there is fail, though. It is a complete and utter failure. When you spend the most money ever guaranteed on a player and he wins one playoff game, you as an organization failed. I mean, I think that the Vikings got the best possible version of Kirk Cousins they ever could have dreamed of. He put up better statistics here. And if you go back and watch the Washington games, he played better football here in a lot of ways and became a better quarterback. And yet, with the contract, with his shortcomings as a quarterback, it was never enough. And so whether you want to blame the coaches, the GMs for not building the teams good enough, circumstances, whatever it might be, it didn't work. You can't sign that contract with a team coming off an NFC championship and win one playoff game in 6 years and tell me that it was fine. It wasn't. So, I look at it as they had a fork in the road in 2018, and they took the wrong route. And it got Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman fired, and it set them back from drafting a bunch of quarterbacks who've turned out to be really good around the NFL, mostly in the AFC. But, and I also think that when we talk about, the team around him and everything else, he couldn't have asked for a lot more when he got there. And then to have Justin Jefferson show up, to win 0 playoff games with Justin Jefferson on his entire rookie contract, it's just an abject failure. And there's no other way to put it. And that's why any discussion about bringing him back is like, no. Like, based on what would you do that? So, yeah, I mean, you never know. I don't want to call it before it's official, but that's kind of why I look at it as, why would there be any reason to continue down this road that has never gotten them close outside of winning 13 games and then losing to a terrible Giants team in the first round?
That sounds a lot like some of the frustration after he left here. That all sounds very familiar. And then, you wind up in the quarterback desert and you're like, damn it, I wish you'd just bring him back and try it again. It's a weird quarterback in the NFL is hard as hell, man. And that is the nature of it. But everything you said, totally true. Also, correction, Isle Hoffman here. Matthew Collar, formerly of 1500 ESPN up in Minnesota, now writes for Purple Insider, also host of their podcast where you can listen to his conversation on Cousins and the Vikings with Kevin Seifert from ESPN, their latest episode. So, Matthew, apologies for the outlet mix-up there, but happy to have you on. You were fantastic, and as there's more Viking news that perhaps is relevant here to D.C., we'd love to have you back.
Yep, 1500 ESPN no longer exists. So,
that is so sad.
That's how Purple Insider got started, was during the pandemic. 1500 was shut down by the people who owned it, so I started my own thing. But, not offended. I love my time there.
Yeah, it's a legacy radio. It's like, if you're a radio dork like me, like that's one of the stations you know about. And I guess in the pandemic, I left radio for a little bit, and I came back, and I guess I missed that story. Damn, that's depressing. Well, that's fun, Matt.
It's worked out great. No, honestly, truly, it's worked out great. Like, to go independent, do the podcast thing and everything else. So I'm fine. It's been wonderful, actually.
Oh, that's great. Well, I hope my boss isn't listening and thinking that I'm getting any ideas. Matthew, thanks so much for the time, man. Your insight was really great, really valuable. Good, continued success, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay, Matthew Collar, Purple Insider is the website and the podcast where you can check out all of his work. When we get back here, actually, Anthony, let's do this. Let's you and I talk about Cousins real quick because we don't have time to go to a break and come back and then have an actual segment. And then Linnell is going to join us coming up at the bottom of the hour. So the Cousins thing at the end. If we want to have our digital department, have our guy Lou write something up, Cousins failure, that'll get some clicks, that'll get some headlines. But it is this thing where, like, I understand what he's saying, but at the same time, like, Cousins before he popped his Achilles was playing like a top 10 quarterback last year, and this is the problem. Is it's so freaking hard to get good quarterback play. And then you have to ask the question, and this is like where I think it gets a little twisted. How much is good quarterback play actually worth in the NFL? Because unless it's Mahomes level, it's hard to guarantee anything. If you're Pat Mahomes, you're going to the freaking Super Bowl. But outside of him and a couple of stretches of Brady's career, you don't get that level of quarterback play that often. And it is a league where parity has ruled out, in part because it's one-game playoffs and weird stuff happens in the playoffs. But even like, Peyton Manning only won 2 rings. He was he and Brady were going back and forth for the best in the sport forever. Josh Allen's incredible. I'd take Josh Allen tomorrow. But what has he done? Only so much. Like, this is the nature of it. And for, like, Cousins has had stretches where he plays as a borderline top 5 quarterback for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games in Washington and in Minnesota. But I would say he probably averages out somewhere around the bottom of the top 10 or just outside of it. And what is that worth? Because if you don't have one, it feels like it's worth everything. And if you have one and it only gets you one playoff win in 3 years, then you're like, well, I'm not paying for that.
It's funny. We're having this conversation literally on the heels of, Russell Wilson getting cut from the Broncos or about to be released from the Broncos because they sacrificed so much to bring him in.
Yeah.
And the fact that, me personally, I think Russell Wilson played good last year, but
Yeah.
at the amount of money that they paid him, he didn't necessarily live up to that contract. So it's sort of kind of that situation is unfair to Russell Wilson because of what was surrounding him. But Kirk Cousins, man, he had some pieces around him, and he just couldn't get over the hump. So,
But is it Kirk's fault that 2 years ago they had the worst defense in the league?
no,
Right?
not at all.
And that's the bitch of it is this year. Brian Flores comes in, does a great job as the DC, turns that defense around, takes him a little while. By the time he turns it around, Kirk's Achilles pops.
Yeah.
It's such a silly league. It just is a dumb league where dumb stuff happens and then Pat Mahomes wins the Super Bowl. That's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of the pressure gets put on the quarterback. And
For sure.
to be honest, I think it should because they're the ones that's out there getting paid so much. And the Vikings, they're the first team to really show back Kirk Cousins, to really put their faith in him. The former Washington team, they didn't necessarily do that. They kept franchise tagging him. So, for the Vikings to go out there, put their faith in him, they really wanted, results. And, I think Kirk sort of kind of came up a little short.
Yeah.
In those big playoff moments. But I think a lot of the pressure is more so on the quarterback. They're not going to look at anything else.
I think that's totally true. And I think it begs the question that I asked. I don't remember if it was last offseason when we were talking about quarterbacks because we wound up doing this every year. But it might have been 2 years ago when they traded for Carson. And I was like, I think it was when they traded for Wentz. And I was like, are you better off getting, if you're paying Wentz, was it 28? I think that he was getting paid that year. Are you better off paying Carson Wentz 28 and getting $18 million worth of quarterback play? Now, they got about negative 20 because Wentz was awful. But at the time, we didn't know that was going to happen. But I was like, that's not a $28 million quarterback, right? So are you better off getting $15, $16 million worth of quarterback play, whatever that means, out of a $28 million quarterback or $10 million worth out of a $10 million quarterback? And that, to me, is the question. From a value standpoint, why Mahomes works is because you get your money's worth, even though you pay him more than everybody else in the sport. Allen gets you close. He gets you in the games. He gives you a chance. Burrow, same thing. Those guys are going to be worth it. And this is going to be the question with a guy like Justin Herbert. Herbert's awesome. Every team should want Justin Herbert. But if he doesn't give the Chargers $200 whatever million worth of quarterback play over the next 5 years, he ain't worth it.
Nope.
Kyler Murray is an incredibly talented quarterback. He ain't worth that contract because of what it does. I know the salary cap is super fungible, but because of what it does to everything else on your roster. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app when we are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And we're going to do something a little different next. It's Overreaction Tuesday, and we're actually going to do it on a Tuesday. Linnell joins us. We're going to FaceTime Linnell. Seriously. Next on the Hoffman Show. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, where you see via FaceTime. We got Linnell with us for an overreaction Tuesday. We're back on a Tuesday, Linnell. We're doing Tuesday on a Tuesday.
I was about to say, it's actually a Tuesday. That means the overreactions will be hot and overreacting.
Hot and overreacty. Put that in your dictionary, Webster. All right. So you and the boss and Anthony were apparently yelling at each other in the hallways yesterday about what happened here.
So Anthony walked by just to chop it up. I think it was during one of you guys' commercial breaks. Just came to come by and say hi. And then CK overheard Anthony asking, "What do you think about Kirk Cousins?" So Anthony actually brought it up, despite what he will say to you. He brought it up, and I was like, "Hell yeah, I'd take Kirk Cousins." And then CK walked by and was like, "Huh? Anyone not wanting to draft a quarterback at 2? You're just a lunatic." And I said, "CK, I guess I'll be talking to you tonight for 3.5 hours on overtime, because that's really, Craig, been my whole premise this entire offseason. And I know people are looking for shock jock overreaction-y takes, as we just made up that word. But, like, I'm more of coming from the approach of, like, look, leave no stone unturned. I have a drinking game that I play with the fans. Clearly, you don't want people to drink and drive, Craig. But we're at the mercy of the evaluator. Whatever Adam Peters and company want to do, whatever the brain trust comes up with at the end of the day, I'm on board with it. Craig, you're somebody that's pretty astute and picks up on little things. Notice when Adam Peters talks about the number 2 overall pick and the offseason, he finishes with the same exact quote is how I'll describe it. We're going to do what's best for the franchise. He continues to say that. And I think he really means that. And I think they're really doing their due diligence, vetting this process, looking at the veteran options, looking at trade back options, looking at trade up options. And I think that's the right way to go about it. My frustration is like fans and people shutting certain ideas down. Like, I just don't think that's appropriate when it comes to this offseason with this team in particular. We're in year 1 of a rebuild. You can set this thing whatever direction you want it to go and pick up the rest of the pieces later. I obviously know how important it is to have a franchise quarterback. And when you have the number 2 overall pick, that seems like the best avenue to get that. But I always say you got to be Beyonce crazy in love with Caleb Williams or Drake May or Jaden Daniels to even take them with that number 2 pick. We're making the assumption right now that they are, and we're just so early on in the process that I'm not willing to rule.
So I have actually kind of had, I can't call this an overreaction because this has been my take. Is there are enough teams out there that are quarterback hungry, that are quarterback needy, that if you don't love one of these guys, you should trade out of this pick. And people are like, you have to. And I get it, right? And Sam Fortier did a really good job of distilling the point down into this simple sentence when he joined me on set in Indy last week, which is you should like just take the quarterback at 2 if you like any of them, because and like I get that. Hopefully never. But I'd also point out that some of the best quarterbacks in the league weren't drafted in the top 5. Now, some people take that to a silly extreme, which is to say, like, well, let's see the analytics. You're better off to middle of the first round. And like, no, you're not. If you divide up the Super Bowl championships over the course of time, like half of them come from guys who were picked 1-1 over. That's the best guys. Yeah. And then if you were the ultimate outlier, like that number becomes significantly higher because they played what? 58. He's got the percentages of taking a guy, someone anywhere else. That said, I think that with some other generation talent, Marvin improving time, and if he can add it to your roster plus other stuff, plus this, plus that. Okay. If Jaden Daniels or Drake May, then I would trade back and take the extra draft capital and JJ McCloud. You want to have more tickets. But as you said, like, I think the thing that people don't get out of that pick, you're a moron. So it cuts both ways. Instead, in the eye of the evaluator, and for the first time in a long time, I actually trust here as much as you can trust anyone, given that quarterback is as hard of an evaluation as any position in any sport on the whole entire planet.
And I agree with that. And one thing that like on with people's counter argument to this is, when are you ever going to be in the top 5 again? The type of capital that you can Knicks, or you love JJ McCarthy, who now seems like he's a lock to go top 10, but we'll see it when it happens. I think it's Minnesota at 12 or Denver at 12. Let's just say
Denver's at 12.
Quarterback hungry.
Yeah. We're part of the draft process where I know like 15. And then Oakland or Vegas is 12.
Vegas is 13 is 11.
11, and then Denver's 12. Yeah, there you go.
So let's just use the hypothetical of Washington trading with Denver. Get a draft haul to where, your record may not be bad enough to pick in the top 5, but you're going to have the excess capital to pony up the picks and move like the other
quarterbacks, and they do, and you're right. They're going to suck. So their pick, it's exactly what Chicago just did with Carolina. Chicago wasn't bad enough to be in the top 5, barely. But Carolina sure was.
Exactly. But I think we both agree, and I think that's the point I want to harp on. Like, if they do love play games, it's something to me where even if you love Caleb, that's why I'm on board for trading up if you love Caleb, because the capital that you're going to have to give up, it's fine. You're not going to remember it if Caleb ends up being, a generational quarterback that everyone. A long way to go. I was initially saying to Anthony, Kirk Cousins would be. If Bill didn't want to take a quarterback in the first round, and I understand the benefits of taking a first round quarterback to get that, but like a lot of people came out of Indianapolis really drinking the Spencer Rattler Kool-Aid. Say you love that, and he's a guy that you feel like you can get at the top of round 2. You do that, you trade. Peters has done his best work on those picks. I like get the roster through the draft, and with how well they draft, you just as possible. You never know when it's going to be Fred Warner or Dre Greenlaw, so you got to give him those opportunities. to, which is back my take. Shocker. I want to trade and I have it because of how good he drafts. Talking about Adam Peters.
Yeah, it's hard because you do feel like you want to have it both, like always, and
right.
It's no, because like we did the exercise last week where Q Myers was on the show from Raider Nation Radio, and I had him play Telesco, and I was Peters, and like he offered me 3 first-rounders, and I was like, yes, like sure, I'll take it. And then it's like, you know, Trevor Sikkema did it in his post Super Bowl mock, a double trade where you trade back to 12 and then trade up to 10 and take McCarthy, and it's like I kind of like that idea. As I'm more especially reports out of Indy that like obviously he weighed in at a heavier weight than he was at Michigan, and people were telling him like that weight is real. That wasn't like fake fluff weight. Like he really has already put on some serious muscle, and at such a young age, like he's got the ability to put on even more. So maybe the size becomes less of an issue there in terms of just being able to yank down by one hand by some bowling pass rusher. So I think because I look at those picks 36 and 40 and I like them, but there's also a part of me that's like, I think they should trade back up and get into that. Like there's going to probably be a run on tackles in the late teens, early 20s. And like, especially now that they've officially let Leno go, I want to make sure I get a first round caliber tackle, not another project in a guy like Patrick Paul or whoever else, you know, whatever your flavor is that's going to be available at 36 or 40 instead of 21, 22. So like there's a lot of maneuvering I think that could happen in this draft. And I think that you talk about like Peters has done his best work in rounds 4 through 7. I think a lot of evaluators look at this as a 4-round draft, that they're going to have a lot of guys in rounds on them just because there's not the depth of players, because so many guys, instead of coming out, go back into the portal and get an NIL deal, and they extend their college career by a year, and then maybe they get a 3rd round, 4th round grade next year instead of being a 5th, 6th rounder. There's just so many. I think we're still in this post-COVID, very unique like draft situation where the final guys with COVID years are finally coming out, and it's affecting the draft and the depth. And now NIL, like we still haven't settled into what's normal there. So I know that's like a lot of information. Like that's the reality. This is a draft as much as any I can remember. And especially with Washington having as blank of a slate and the roster as they do, where it's like how many position groups are there on a team? There's like 7 or 8, depending on how you divide up your DBs or whatever. And 6 of them are positions of need. So it's just how do you try to fill all that? Do you even bother? By the way, when you talk about a guy like Cousins or whoever, there's $80 million in cap space to play with too.
Yeah, and the thing about, and someone shut down my Cousins stuff last night with like, well, if you sign him to a deal, you're going to eat up half of your cap space for this year. Well, depending on salary cap gymnastics and how that works, you can maybe, if Kirk wants to backload his contract, you can do that, which is probably not smart because he's an older guy.
Yeah, I think Kirk, well, just knowing Kirk and the way he does his contracts, like it's going to be a 3-year guaranteed, pretty even deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I like the idea of potentially, bringing him in if you don't love any of these tackle. And I think tackle and receiver, are two when it comes to class is historically good at both of those spots, which is why I agree with you wholeheartedly about ponying up 36 and 40 to go get 7 range, because I think that there is going to be a run on tackles, and Washington should be able to come away with this draft. Like, I really think you have all the ammunition and capital to do that. I think about the guys going in that second round being viewed as more of projects. I see what you mean by that, because guys are going to get pushed up, and then whoever's left is going to be like, why are you left standing? So
right. Well, and that quick, like in looking at the Jimmy Johnson draft chart, and like which is how teams kind of calculate how these trades go, the points, you don't have to do 36 and 40 together. That's actually paying too much. For like 23, for instance. So it'd be like 40 and, like a 4th rounder or something like that. And so if you can do that and you still stay, 3 picks in the top 40, that's fantastic. And you sacrifice something later in this draft, or do you sacrifice a future third or whatever in the hopes that, next year you're picking more in the middle of the 3rd round
Right.
Like there's ways to do it. Is kind of the point where you're not all of a sudden face both of those picks unless you're going back up like closer to the top 15.
I wonder, and it's interesting to think, like, we talk about the potential of trading back up into the first round for. They've got so many needs for like to see, and this is I got a personal, I guess I won't call it a relationship, but I want this to happen because I know the kid. I would love Chop Robinson and Dan Quinn's defense and the way that he jumped off with his 40 in the shuttle times. Like he's the best pure get off pass rusher, and I think he's got. It's a similar prospect in terms of like the ability to move him around and things of that nature. So I'll say all that to say, like, love tackle is a huge need too, but like I just think the fan hat off sometimes, Craig, because like I want to look at it and think that my team's not that far away from competing because of the coaching was bad last year, but you're 4-13 for a reason. So I'm all for completely churning this roster and trying to get a bunch of new players in here because you need it, quite frankly.
For sure. All right, so there's another option to get players. We talk next week. We'll already be underway. Let's see if Linnell's got some free agency targets because I'm sure he does. Next on the Hoffman Show.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from the ESPN Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
The Hoffman Show, we're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Segment 2 here with Linnell, staying with us through the break on FaceTime to have a little Overreaction Tuesday on a Tuesday. Free agency edition now, Linnell. Let's go big picture first. Like, forget names for a second. Are you like, hey, let's definitely do this in free agency versus definitely do this in the draft? Is that how you're thinking of it from your seat at this point?
For sure, and I think that's the way it's got to be, and I love the way the NFL calendar is set up, right, Craig? You go free agency, whatever you don't fill in free agency, you can sometimes get in the draft the next month. With the offensive line needs that this team has, I think offensive guard in particular is where I would be going in free agency heavy and spend my premium. And obviously, you don't want to overpay a guard, but it's a pressing need for the team. We talked about a couple of tackle options off air as well. I just don't think this tackle class is very good. And always the old adage with free agent offensive linemen, period, is that they get to free agency for a reason because it's really hard to find good offensive linemen in this league. So you don't want to just let them walk. But the guard class, a hell of a lot stronger to me than the tackle class. I really like in this free agency. All types of different flavors of edge rushers. There are guys that are working on that second and third contract. Like I like rounder from Philadelphia. He did well in spot duty after the trade deadline for Houston last year. I wouldn't probably get in the Jonathan Grenard sweepstakes because I think he's going to blow the bank for just not enough production for my liking. We know Dorrance Armstrong is a guy that we expect Washington to have some interest in because of the link to Dan Quinn. But that edge rusher market, can really hit hard in free agency. And I want to ask you this, Craig, like, how would you address edge in free agency? Because I have full confidence that DQ is going to get the most out of KJ Henry. I just think from a physical maturity standpoint, he was already ahead of where Andre Johnson and the other guys coming back are. Go big money with edge rusher in free agency, or do you like 3 bargain bin guys and then work as more a rotational pass rush?
I think it depends on who the big guy is. Unfortunately, Brian Burns is the guy that I think everyone wants. Although, you look at some lists and some guys are higher on Josh Allen, the former or soon to be former Jacksonville Jaguar, although they could also, bring him back for sure. So there's a couple of higher end guys, but I tend to think you probably wind up going more. Can you get a Danielle Hunter? Can you get a Zadarius Smith? Like there's some names out there that have pass rush and know-how to pair with the KJ Henry. And I think, we talked earlier about trading back up into the 20s for an offensive tackle. Like if you really love Chop Robinson or Darius Robinson out of Mizzou, like do you go that route and trade back up? Because those guys probably aren't falling to the second round anymore. I think Darius Robinson's chances of falling ended at the Senior Bowl. Chop Robinson's chances of falling ended at the Combine when he ran a 4.48 40. So I think that I would probably attack it that way. James Smith-Williams or Casey Tua, like pick one. But they're also like the thing about continuity, and I've talked about this with like Kendall Fuller. How much value is it really bringing a guy back when it's not the same scheme? And I think especially like on the back end, probably there's some because there's been communication there and like they don't have to learn each other. And I think there's some of that certainly with like James rushing off of John really successfully and Duran really successfully over the past couple of years, and more so of like being the supplement to what they're doing, unlocking those guys, and they know how to rush together. So I think that there definitely is some, even though it's a different scheme. But I think definitely like one of your starters, at least, if not both of your starters, are not on this roster right now, and you need to go find those guys in free agency. And whether it's you're trying to target someone who's a pass rush specialist for third downs, or whether it's a first and second down guy, like some of the names that we mentioned, I think that there's multiple ways to attack it. That's the good news. I don't know that any of them are great. I think that's the bad news.
And because like edge rusher is such a premium position, I kind of gave you stuff that you dropped a couple of weeks ago, and I think you had Darius Robinson at 36. And this is before like the Flash. When
hey man, if he's available, it's not our fault. The PFF mock draft simulator let him come to us.
So it made sense in the moment, but just because of the other needs that you have, I would be kind of, I don't know if annoyed is the right word, Craig. If they went edge at 36, okay, you better come in and be a starter. Like,
well, that's what I mean. If Darius Robinson comes in at 36, like, he's a starter.
That's why that name in particular I didn't mind, but the position is kind of like
they don't have like positions on this team where you're looking to upgrade. There are some positions on this team where you literally don't have starters. And edge is the top, like the literal top of that list. Because right now, the only guys on the roster are Andre Jones and KJ Henry. And then maybe some like, futures contract guys.
Jalen Harris, I think, is under contract.
Yeah.
They didn't do much with them. So, but no, I agree. Like edge rusher is a huge need. And I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough. We highlighted at the end of last season, the trade deadline, when Sweat and Chase got dealt, not only was the pass rush non-existent, Craig, they couldn't their life. I was thinking about going out and trying to get in some good shape and maybe show my long arm or something, man.
Settle down over there.
Seriously though, like but to prove the point, like they do need to improve that position, and I think with this defense in particular, they're going to be able to be versatile with how they rush. Like I expect to see Daron Payne standing up every now and then, not like over
the middle, but I also expect him to line up as a 5 technique sometimes, like so outside on the edge. Like they'll do that. John will do that sometimes. Like they're going to move around favorable, but will look different than Michael Parsons because Micah's one of one. The concepts can still apply to other elite players.
Yeah. Another position group that it feels like people are craving, think about a little bit, is in the secondary. Cornerback in particular. I more so look at the coaching, though, as to why everyone struggled last year on the back end. It was such a stark contrast from 22 to 23 in terms of the production, them not giving up the big plays, etc. Kendall Fuller's a free agent because the cornerback market it's like L'Jarius Sneed and Jalen Johnson and then Kendall. He's going to get the bag, it feels like. So I don't know if you want to get in a bidding war with a team for Kendall Fuller's services. I really am excited to see DQ and Joe Witt coach up the guys that are already under contract here for Washington. I'm going to bring up a super alias name that kind of had a scare in that San Francisco game. I want to see Christian Holmes. Like, used on defense because I think he plays with the right junkyard dog mentality and may not be the best cover corner, but he's a guy that you need. But the point is really, like, I do think that is a position of need as well. But I don't think you need to attack it with big money in free agency or one of your like top 3 or 4 draft picks.
So
but I do think you need to bring in some bodies.
Corner to me is one of the most fascinating positions on the roster for many of the reasons that you said. I'm just going to expand on it even more. One, I 100% agree this year. I just refuse to think that all those guys stink. If everybody stinks at one position, it probably ain't the guys. So it's either the guys that pick them and maybe they do all stink and that's, those guys are gone, or it's the guys that coached them up. And I tend to think it's probably more and that just weren't up to the NFL caliber task. So with that said, though, what do you think of Benjamin St-Juste if you're this staff? A guy who does not have his ball skills. He's got everything else. Got good feet. He's got good length. He plays. He could probably add a little bit of strength, but I think some of that is just technique. But he's not thick. Like receivers being behemoths out there, like you have the play strength. But some of play, and I don't mean coverage leverage. Ben St-Juste has ever been really taught properly how to do that, or was being told how to do that properly last year. For inconsistency look like everywhere else. And then the other thing with BSJ is, and for Quan, is BSJ a nickel or is he an outside? Is Quan a nickel or is he a safety? So of impact on who they bring in, because if you think Quan's a nickel, then you need a safety, and your likelihood to bring back Cam Curl goes up, or to spend somewhere else at safety and bring in a dude goes up. If Quan's a safety, or is going to play most of his time at safety, and BSJ is a nickel, then you need another outside corner. If BSJ is an outside corner, then you need a nickel. So like both in free agency or the draft, I actually think like who they bring in tells us a lot about how they plan, at least initially, to use these guys. But there also is the versatility to move them around with this. And right now, there's too many gaps because I don't know where some of these guys go, and I don't know how good they think some of them are. Because I could see them watching BSJ tape and being like, that dude's a backup for us.
Yeah, I also just think him at nickel, I never liked the idea of it. I just don't think he has like the short area quickness to cover guys in the slot.
But I think that the idea that slot receivers are 5'8" little dudes who chop it up, like that's not really what slot receivers are anymore. There are some of those, but you also have the Cordell Patterson types who are like, we're gonna go line up in the slot and we're gonna power slot you. And use the physicality over the middle of the field to like box guys out and be able to run after the catch. And so it's a different, like there's some different body types now that are playing that slot position. I think BSJ's feet are actually kind of in, but like at a level that's legit for that position. Like I actually think he's played some of his better games in the slot. He's played some great football outside. It's just, I don't know what the ball skills thing freaks me out. Because it's the ball production is like
defense wants.
He has almost zero ball production. If Desmond Ridder hadn't thrown him a gift, he has zero interception. And for a coaching staff that values that, do they look at that and go, that dude can't play for us, or God, he's good at everything else. If we could just teach him some ball skills, this dude could be an all-pro. Because I could see it swinging that way.
If you're gonna build a modern day NFL corner in a lab, Benjamin St-Juste has all the measurables, the height, weight, speed that you want. Like you said, the ball production is scary, is the way that I would put it. Because there's no way you play as much as he does and doesn't have any interceptions to this point, outside of the pick he was able to get last year. But I'm just excited to see what the coaching staff is going to get out of these dudes. Because like, I like Percy Butler, but I think Percy Butler needs to be coached up technique-wise. He's another guy that height, weight, speed, like he's got it. Quan, I thought Quan has also is another guy that has that like junkyard dog mentality.
Oh, Quan's a dude.
Yeah, they're gonna coach him up, and I'm sure they were high on him coming out last year as well. Interesting because like Dallas, one thing that they did here in their 3-year stretch with them is kind of convert some defensive backs to linebacker and like play them in the box. Who are going to be the candidates for that? I feel like we automatically look at Quan and Cam.
Or do they go sign Kyle Duggar?
I was looking at it, right? Like, they came out in the same draft class. I didn't even really know that Kyle Duggar was that young. It feels like he's an older player, but he's another guy that's like Swift. I just don't know about, I don't like spending the bag at safety.
I mean, they got to spend it somewhere, and
They do.
That's the thing when you got the most cap space in the league. The New England's trying to catch up. They got enough money to spend. Like at some point, just be like, okay. But I also know that they might do some bigger. That's the other thing is like, do they do some bigger 1-year deals, sign some vets to kind of be culture setters, but also keep the flexibility moving forward?
Two quick things. Trading for some of these tagged veterans is an option too. T. Higgins is going to get dealt because they just simply can't pay him and Jamar Chase top of the market money. Do you give up a pick to go get T. Higgins because you can use him in your receiver? 36. I don't think they're going to be able to get a first for him unless it's like an end of the first round first.
I don't like that for Washington. Like I think the value, if I'm a maybe, but I think like you already paid Terry theoretically or whatever it is, you'll pay Jahan. You can't have that, but like then you're.
But then my T, who's the most legit number one? I would think T is a better receiver than both of those guys.
So I think he and Terry are very close. But like the point is, like you can't pay top of the market money for both of them. That's like literally what Cincinnati's trying to avoid. And I know Jamar's like true top of the market, and Terry's like high in the market. But I think that you have to find production in other ways there. Like you have too much capital invested.
With this draft, like
I agree. But like, should someone like if I'm the Chiefs, would I give up something? Can allow.
You feel about L'Jarius Sneed too? Like that's another situation where
he's one I poke around on. Like if you tell me I can give up 40 for L'Jarius Sneed, I'm probably doing that.
Yeah, and he is like the ultimate Joe Witt, Dan Quinn corner too. Like man to man.
3-team deal. Washington sends. We'll even give him 36. Washington sends 36 to Kansas City for L'Jarius Sneed. Kansas City to Cincinnati for T. Higgins. We just NBA the NFL.
Did it.
What's up?
That'd be crazy. Has there ever been a 3-team deal?
I'm sure there's got it. I'm sure it's got to be. I'm sure it had to happen. If you watch,
the execs aren't as friendly in the NFL as they're on the NBA. So.
No, and there's also not like the cap gymnastics that has to happen in the NBA that makes that. And remember, leave a note in the comments section when this video eventually makes its way to you next tomorrow and then overtime later in the week?
Yes, sir.
All right.
You got
tomorrow, Team 980 with Chris Russell from 1 to 4, and then make sure you're tuning in at night for Linnell on Overtime at 106.7 The Fan. When we get Team 980.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN Show 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
We'll talk about the Wizards and whether or not they're having the greatest 15-game losing streak in NBA history before the end of the show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Right now, though, quick update as we have now passed the franchise and transition tag deadline here on, well, I guess it's passed everywhere. It's just like on the East Coast, the deadline passed about an hour ago. Now, all the players I'm about to say have until 4 p.m. on July 22nd for them to work out long-term deals, or they're on the tag. Of course, there's other options here, but I will now give you the information, Anthony, and the rest of the listening audience. The Baltimore Ravens tagged. These are all franchise tag players. Justin Matabuke, Panthers, Brian Burns, Bears corner Jalen Johnson, Bengals receiver T. Higgins, Colts receiver Michael Pittman. Jags did go ahead and tag Josh Allen, the pass rusher. Chiefs, L'Jarius Sneed. Bucks, Antoine Winfield. Remember, the Bucks also did work out a long-term deal with Mike Evans. Then there is the transition tag, a.k.a. around these parts, the Chris Russell tag. That is what Kyle Duggar got from the Patriots. The difference is this. The transition tag is actually easier to explain. It is basically like restricted free agency. So for a price tag, 1-year deal at the average of the top 10 salaries of the position, so for Kyle Duggar at safety, it's $13.8 million, you reserve the right of first refusal. So let's say the Washington Commanders, who did not tag with either tag Cam Curl, really like Kyle Duggar. As Linnell and I were talking about, Duggar is a guy that can probably come down and play in the box a lot. He kind of fits what some of the stuff they did in Dallas, is that safety hybrid linebacker, maybe even better than Curl, than Curl would. So let's say that is the play. Washington would simply sign Duggar to an offer sheet, the contract they want to give him. The Patriots then can either match it, and Duggar doesn't have a say if he gets the same money in New England, and New England's like, yep, we're good. Then they'll bring Duggar back, and it's kind of a way to let the other teams set the market. There's no trade. There's no nothing. And if there's no offer sheet that's ever signed, it is a 1-year deal for Duggar at that top 10 money. Meanwhile, the franchise tag is average of the top 5 salaries of the position. So, for instance, Pittman and Higgins, as wide receivers, are going to make $21.8 million this year if they play on the tag. That money fully guaranteed, and that money also obviously counts 100% against the cap. Then if a team wants to sign that player to an offer sheet, they have to, and the other team doesn't match, it's 2 first-round picks. Now, that doesn't mean that's the only options, because sometimes the team who tagged the player doesn't really actually want to keep them. They're doing it for leverage purposes. Say, we will keep you on this, but if another team wants to come get you, we'll listen to stuff. So if you trade for a tagged player, it doesn't mean you have to give up for 2 first-rounders. If you want to sign them and play that game, that is super risky. But you could call that team and be like, hey, we want to sign your guy long-term. We'll give you a second or a first. Will you trade the rights to us? Then the new team works out the deal with that player. So just because, say, T. Higgins gets tagged and the Bengals want to trade him, it just means they won't lose him for nothing. Now, they might get stuck with him. Another team might be like, nah, we're good. We're not gonna mess around here. But it kind of allows them to have more control with the higher risk that if there is no deal that they find, that player comes back on that very high single-year number. If I am Washington, I'm interested in Antoine Winfield for sure at safety. Dude's a stud. I'm interested in Duggar. I'm very interested in Brian Burns. But I do think that, like, Carolina, for instance, is going to get a first for Burns. Or is going to want a first for Burns. If you can somehow trade 36 or 40, that'd be kind of funny if you wind up trading 40, the pick you got from Chicago, for Montez Sweat for Brian Burns. You obviously have to pay him, but, like, okay. I'm interested in that. And I'd be happy with Burns over Sweat. That might seem silly a year from now because Montez in Chicago was outstanding. But that's the kind of thing that we're talking about in terms of the Commanders. We'll obviously go through more of these names tomorrow here on the Hoffman Show. And don't forget, we are your home for free agency coverage. Next Monday, going to be a doozy. Legal tampering period starts in the mid-afternoon during Russell's show, and then we are on it starting at 4 o'clock here on the Team 980. Coming up next, the Wizards lost again last night, but are they having the best 15-game losing streak in NBA history? Anthony and I will discuss and tell you what we mean by that next on the Hoffman Show. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Final half hour of the show here. We are done at 6:45 tonight. Got some hoops coming at you. Pregame starts then. Hoops last night here on the Team 980, late night out in Utah. And it ended the same as every other night in the last month and a half for the Wizards. Another loss. 15 straight, Anthony. They have lost 15 straight games, which is actually not even the full story. Because the Wizards, before that 15-game winning streak, won back-to-back games against the Pistons and the Spurs, of course. And before that, they had lost like 8 or 9 in a row. I'm gonna actually pull this up now. But they've literally lost like 23 of 25 or something like that. This is a bad basketball team, bro. And I apologize for saying that they would be not a bad basketball team at the beginning of the year.
You said they would be fun to watch.
I thought they would be fun to watch. They should have been fun to watch. And they absolutely blew that with how they were playing and some of the lineup decisions and all of these things. I still don't like. I look back with clarity going like, yeah, I understood why I said that. That wasn't crazy. It was just wrong. Sometimes as an analyst, as a guesser, you get stuff wrong. Yeah, they had lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row. They won 2 in a row, and now they've lost 15 straight. So that is 21 of 23. And the schedule on ESPN.com only goes back to the game before that other loss. They lost that one too. So I'm going to guess if I go back even further, they're like 3 and 27 in their last 30. It's not good. But well, here, you ask your question first.
Oh, no, I wasn't going to make it a question. It was going to be a statement. You know, I wish this was last year where we could have had a chance at getting Victor Wembanyama.
Here's the thing.
This poorly.
They did. They had that chance. They were one ping pong ball away.
Yep.
Oh, what a difference it would be. But here's my question for you, Anthony. As we see last night, Jordan Poole, another really good night. Jordan Poole, 32 points on 18 shots, went 6 of 10 from 3. He's taking shots now. He's taking the right shots. He's making shots. Tyus Jones, another stellar 21 point, 6 assists, super efficient night. You know, Denny Avdia, 16 points, 11 boards. Bagley, not a good scoring night. He only had 6, but like he's got another 9 rebounds. Is this the best 15-game losing streak in NBA history? Like, I know people can laugh at that and be like, are you being a homer because you guys have the games and you just want people to listen, or, you know, you just want to be nice to the teams? Go listen to my coverage of them moving out of town. I call it like I see it. I'll be nice when there are nice things to say. And, you know, when the truth is not nice to them, it is what it is. But think about the goals for this season, right? The goals for this season were to see, and especially the second half of this season, to see Jordan Poole get back on track. You want to see Avia continue to grow. You want to see guys have really good, productive nights. And you just understand that they're not a good piece they're not pieces that fit together. They lack shooting. They lack defense. And unfortunately, on a night where Corey Kispert goes 1 for 6 from 3, and Avia goes 0 of 4, despite his otherwise good night, you're not going to win that game. And they're not good defensively. Hilariously, there was the guy who had the best plus-minus on the night was Johnny Davis. In his 8 minutes, they were plus 10. Now, he continues to have very little statistical production. Doesn't seem to have a major impact. But when he was on the floor, like, they were able to keep it close. They had a nice run there in the second quarter, or it was the early third, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of that game, where they were up and then, like, you blinked. I think it was the second quarter. Like, they were up and you blinked, and then Utah went on this crazy run, and all of a sudden, Wizards' double-digit lead was gone, and they were trailing going into half, and they trailed, obviously, with a pretty poor fourth quarter by the end of it, where they only scored 14 points, and Jordan Clarkson was far and away the best player on the floor. But I think when you look at, like, the games that Avia has had as of late, and, you know, I know we went on the whole Denny thing a couple of weeks ago, but, like, he's developing into the player that he should be, a really, really good starting caliber role player. Like, in the last, like, 10 games or so, where he's had some stinkers, but, like, you know, before the All-Star break, had that 24-point game against Phoenix. He had 24 then. He had only 9, but 8 rebounds against Cleveland. 24 and 11 against Boston. 21 and 13. 25 and 7. Has the monster 43 and 15 and then 15-15 against the Lakers, 14-5 against the Clippers, and then 16-11. But like that 16, like if he can get 16-8, like that's what I want from Deni Avdija for the rest of his career. Nevertheless, if he can get better than that, like that's great. He's actually doing the things. Marvin Bagley is consistently rebounding the basketball at a high level, and if they can get him some more rolls to the rim, I think that's great. And he's definitely a part of their, I would say, immediate future. We'll see if he's a part of their long term. Unfortunately, they have no depth at center again. They had it for like 4 days. They traded Bagley and then for Bagley, and then they traded away Gafford, and there went the depth again. And Gafford was hurt for part of that, and so was Bagley. So they literally had like less than 10 games where both of them were actually available. And they actually won a couple of those. Kuz is had a, kind of the season we expected. And then I think most importantly, like the last, 5 games or so since he's been coming off the bench, Jordan Poole looks like Jordan Poole again. In his last 10 games, Jordan Poole is 19.7 points, 4 assists, 1.5 steals, only 2.7 turnovers, shooting per game, shooting 41% overall, which is a little low, but 39% from 3. And he's getting to the free throw line a little bit more, and he's knocking down his free throws at the very, very good rate that he always does. I mean, there was a point where a couple of years ago, he was the best free throw shooter on the Warriors, which is crazy because Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are on the Warriors. Jordan Poole was like 95%. It was nuts. But he's at only 85% for the season and basically 86% for his last 10 games. But, I think Jordan Poole is capable of being an even bigger scorer than that. But if Jordan Poole scoring basically 20 a game, like that's what you want. That's what we were praying for. Considering on the season, he's averaging 16. He's averaging 15 at home. So, like, while the pieces don't fit together, it's not a good team. Defensively, they have immense amounts of issues. Anthony, things are happening in the right direction individually for the Wizards. I do declare this is the greatest 15-game losing streak in the history of the NBA.
You have a very unique perspective on this losing streak, but I think it's fair. Considering the expectations we had for the Wizards, like our main focus is, growth in our young players, development, and things of that nature. We didn't really set out to go out there and win too many games. I mean, we don't want to be the Pistons where you lose, how many games did they lose? 26, 28 or something like that?
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, like you don't want to be the Pistons, but you still, want to grow during this tough stretch of, a season and most likely all of their careers, to be honest.
Right. And the thing is, like, the guys are frustrated, and they should be because they're competitive. And I'm sure, like, Kispert and all these guys that are used to winning in college at a program like Gonzaga, some of the other players that have done a lot of winning in their college careers or high school careers. I mean, all of them probably won in high school. Or a guy like Poole, who's used to winning in Golden State. They had the one bad year where Steph was hurt, but, like, they haven't really had a ton of injury issues. They just are a bad basketball team. But they were built that way. They were built in a flawed way because this season's results didn't matter. But I think what you're seeing is the process is finally yielding some of the results that we'd like to see. What I would be really curious on, and we can ask. The Wizards front office is not really wanting to give a ton of updates on how things are going on their internal metrics, which I understand. Because like what good does that do then to come on my show and be like, yep, actually, we're seeing the metrics that these guys that we want them to hit on rebounding percentage, on shooting percentage, on this type of shot. Because then if fans are like, oh, well, they're hitting their metrics, but they're still losing, like, what's the point of hitting the metrics? And it's like, well, over time, more people hit more metrics, and then that turns into wins. And by the way, the team's going to get a lot more talented. But I think for right now, like, if I'm just being honest with you, as a Wizards fan, like the last week and a half, basically since the All-Star break, you're seeing a lot of the things that you want to see this season, but you're also seeing the flaws in the way this roster is built that gives them almost no chance to win, almost no matter how well a lot of these individuals play, unless they all hit all their marks on any given night. And the level of player that we're talking about here is not going to deliver that level of consistency at this time. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We got some great guests coming up tomorrow. We'll tell you about them next as we wrap up the show. Plus, Jason Kelsey's retirement is off to a flaming start. We'll explain in real things, real people said in real microphones next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Wrapping up here, Providence, Georgetown Hoops, as we call it around these parts, the Rich Vodkin Show. Next. I feel like I literally could not do a Rich impression right now because my voice is so screwed up. I can't even attempt the timbre, the legend of Ahoya's win. Also, I think they'd revoke my degree from Syracuse, so I also am not allowed to. I think that's how that works, Ant.
Yeah. Because what time is it, Craig?
It's 6:33, and we're not going to say the next part of that line because Georgetown basketball is next on the Team 980. Coming up tomorrow on the show, we've been trying to link up with Jason Campbell for a couple weeks now. And JC just became a father again, I believe. So he has been busy on dad duty, and which is more than fine with us. Congratulations to Jason. But we are going to catch up with Jason Campbell tomorrow to do a topic that we've kind of been waiting to talk to Jason on, and one that I've thought a lot about, especially since last week in Indianapolis, which is what do the Commanders need to be thinking about in terms of their quarterback room? Obviously, we need to think about who QB1 is. We spend a lot of time on that. And Jason, as the radio analyst for Auburn, obviously saw Jaden Daniels up close, so we'll get his take on Jaden. I'm sure he's watched some of Drake May. We can talk about Bo Nix because the Bo Nix that Jason saw at Auburn was not very good. The Bo Nix that Jason saw leave Auburn and go to Oregon is a first round prospect. So we can talk about all these college quarterbacks with Campbell, but also is a guy who was a first round draft pick and came into the NFL and had his struggles. And probably looks back at certain things that he liked that helped him and didn't like that hurt him. What about the other quarterbacks in the room? Like, do you want a veteran? Do you want, if you're Drake May coming in, your buddy and Sam Howell to be there? Do you specifically not want your buddy? Like, hey, I love you, but like, we can't be buddy here in the quarterback room. We need someone else. Do you want your buddy and an older quarterback? So that's kind of the crux on top of the actual analysis and who QB1 should be and potential options. And, even if they're not for Washington, you can watch the draft, feel a little smarter with Jason's takes on these quarterbacks. I want to talk to him about kind of the nature of a quarterback room, the best way to build one. And I think he's one of the guys that I would really be curious to hear from on this, especially if we think of the Washington quarterbacks in the last, 25 years or so of Washington football. Ant, what else do we got coming up on the show tomorrow? It's a Wednesday, and we haven't done Never Read the Comments in a while.
Man, we haven't done, Never Read the Comments in a super long time.
So definitely going to do that. We've had a lot. We're not going to go too back into the archives, but, I mean, we're definitely gonna hit some.
And then
hit some comments.
We got Dave Johnson. Wizards play tomorrow, and then we'll also have.
That's right.
Oh, are we gonna have to move and never read the comments?
We are, because JC is gonna be at 5:30, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'm okay with moving Never Read the Comments. So we'll probably do Never Read the Comments at 6 tomorrow.
Okay.
Although maybe we do it at 4:30 because we got Dave at 6:15.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's probably the game plan. And then we also at 5 o'clock, I believe. I don't know if this time is confirmed, but we do know that we're going to have Parker Gabriel on the show. Parker is the Broncos beat reporter for the Denver Post. We had him on week 2 back during the season for Not My Beat, and he was awesome. Like, I remember, unlike, we have a bunch of great guests all the time on the show, but I remember Anthony hanging up from that and just going, that dude was awesome. We got to find an excuse to get him back. Well, thanks, Sean Payton. You doing what you did with Russell Wilson and apparently being infatuated with Drake May is an excuse for us to get Parker Gabriel back. So Parker Gabriel of the Denver Post will join us tomorrow to talk quarterback and kind of continue our series of will this team try to blow Washington away with a draft offer, a trade offer for the number 2 overall pick. So that's our show lineup tomorrow. We'll see what news drops between now and then to start the show, and we'll obviously be hitting on anything breaking and anything that's hot during. So Never Read the Comments. A couple of great guests from out of town, and then obviously Dave getting us set for the Wizards trying to break that 15-game losing streak. For right now, though, it is time to wrap up the show in the most ceremonial fashion that exists. It is time for Real Things Real People Said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to suck this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
Damn good, that long since fired man said. All right, Anthony, I don't know what you have besides Jason Kelsey, but we're starting with Jason Kelsey. So yesterday, Kelsey retired, announced that retirement. Very emotional speech. There's so many great clips from it. I particularly resonated with what he said about his wife, as someone who's also married to a Philly girl. Must say that one hit close to home. But also great stuff about brotherhood, about teammates, about coaches, and who matters in your life, and some other funny stuff about Nick Foles that I definitely can't repeat on the radio. But then today, oh yeah, you heard that, Ant? Yeah,
I have it.
Oh, you should go listen to that part.
It's bleeped.
It is bleeped. Oh,
Yes,
you have it.
I have it.
Oh, this is what Jason Kelsey said about Nick Foles yesterday. Woo!
I won't forget Nick Foles having the game of his life on the biggest stage possible. And the biggest on the team going up to Doug Peterson and asking for the Philly special. And Doug Peterson having the biggest balls in the stadium. Say, yeah, let's do it.
If you're driving with your kids in the car, kids, the word that got bleeped there for reasons we can't explain is heart. Nick Foles had the biggest heart on the team.
Yes.
Heart. Big Heart Nick is what they call him. Today, Jason Kelsey jumped through a flaming table. Yeah.
Jason Kelsey, welcome to New Heights.
Yep, that's how they're starting their podcast tomorrow. I, for one, can't wait for the episode. Jason had said after the Buffalo game, when he went up there to watch Travis play against the Bills, that he had wanted to jump through a table, but he couldn't find a one that was on fire. So they took care of that rather quickly, soon into retirement, as Travis was in Philadelphia yesterday for the ceremony. By the way, did you also see Jason slip in the Taylor Swift lyric when talking about Travis?
I did not.
Yeah, he said, brotherly love, a love I know all too well.
Oh.
Which I didn't even catch it. See, that's like when we,
That's
you know,
smooth.
the OG Real Things, Taylor Swift NFL crossover was Ian Eagle doing the blank space bit. And it's like, if you're going to do it in a way that if you don't know, you don't know. But if you know, you know. It's got to be smooth enough that it works. It can't feel forced. Jason Kelsey, the all too well. I didn't even get it the first time. It took people pointing it out online. I was like, oh, that is a Taylor Swift song. Well done, sir.
But do you think him and his wife, like, discuss ways to, you know, make fun of, like, the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelsey, like, duo?
I feel like Kylie probably's got a couple of funny lines in. She's a funny lady, that Kylie Kelsey. But make fun of, I mean, I would imagine they're, if as long as Travis is happy, like they're very happy to see Travis happy.
Yeah.
So I don't know about make fun of, but like I also think, I think probably, but Travis also has a good sense of humor about it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
At
It's like
what point
it
does
works.
it become like a little too much?
But the thing is, like that's their lives.
Okay.
Right? Like we all think of it as a giant, not bit, but we think of it as like a bunch of content.
Yeah.
That's their real life. Like that is actually like. You ever walked around with a truly famous person?
Nah. I mean, not a truly famous person.
Yeah. Like if you were to walk around with Z in Indianapolis after the Colts win a Super Bowl,
Yeah, that
right?
was crazy.
Like that's their everyday life.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just is what it is. All right, Hoyas basketball next. We'll see you tomorrow back here on the team 980.